Hello, welcome to this week's 8.9 News discussion. I'm ffinlo Costain. The Nuffield Scholarship Programme has announced the appointment of 23 new scholars for 2024. Each year, Nuffield farming scholarships are awarded to deserving individuals working in farming, horticulture, forestry and any other countryside-related industry. The aim of the scholarships is to inspire passion in people and develop their potential to lead positive change in farming and food. And this week, I'm joined by 4 of the new scholars, by Saba Amir, an academic at Aberystwyth University, Lucy George from Peterston Tea, based in the Vale of Glamorgan, Sophie Gregory, an Arla organic dairy farmer from Dorset, and Dan Jones, a sheep farmer from Great Orme in North Wales. Welcome, everybody. Let's start off, if we can, with each of you just outlining what your research projects are. And actually, just before we do that, Sophie, would you mind just telling us what is a Nuffield Scholarship and why are they important?
So Nuffield is a great organisation giving sort of travel scholarships to people who've got a topic that they're passionate about and can bring positive change back to the industry. So there's lots of different sponsors. Mine is Trehane Trust, which often sponsor dairy category. But there's lots of different sponsors who sponsor things that appeal to them.
And what's your scholarship project going to be addressing?
So my scholarship project is what's the future for organic? So as an organic dairy farmer, I think the sector is under quite a lot of pressure at the moment. Consumers quite confused with what organic means. And I'm doing a lot of research anyway, and a lot of the work I do day to day looks at this. So I wanted to find a way of just amalgamating everything and having a bit of a purpose. So the Nuffield really appealed to me on that one.
And how does that work? So organic, you say that it's under pressure, and I imagine part of that pressure is coming from the idea of regenerative farming. There's sort of confusion as to what's regenerative and what's organic, and how these things sort of interrelate.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sort of we saw organic movement move quite quickly in the 90s, and I think that consumer is still buying organic, but it's getting new people into organic, buying, committing and seeing it as a solution for a lot of environmental problems, health problems. It's just re-engaging with the consumer, I think. But regenerative is threatening that. You can be regenerative without being organic. So how does that sit with the consumer?
And what is it that you think that people understand organic to be?
I mean, personally, I think it's sort of an easy environmental choice. But I think that's sort of been lost where conventional is caught up a lot with organic. Consumer is confused whether buying organic is cows out grazing, or actually most of they think that conventional is too. So I think it's totally conventional has chased organic and it's quite close now. So I think that's part of the problem.
And a lot of people don't realise that in addition to the environmental, there are sort of social and animal welfare elements within organic as well. Saba, thanks so much, Sophie. Saba, you're looking at dairy farming as well, but you're looking at a very particular aspect. What's your scholarship about?
So in my Nuffield, I'm going to be looking at calf-cow contact systems. So in conventional dairy farming, the calf is taken away from the cow either soon after or immediately after birth. Now, this is quite a contentious issue, and it has been challenged and will, I think, continue to be challenged on ethical grounds. So in my Nuffield, I'm going to be looking at different calf-cow contact systems and how they can be integrated into commercial dairy farms, especially the large commercial units.
And do you think that there are advantages to calf-cow systems beyond the welfare element?
There are in published in academic literature, there is advantages. There's health benefits to the calf and cow. And also in my Nuffield, what I actually want to be particularly looking at is what is the productivity of these calves that have spent time with the mother, have had the opportunity to have contact with the mother, with the cow, and have suckled from the cow. What is their productivity later on in life? Do they yield more milk when they start milking? Are they less prone to infections? So these are topics that I am going to explore.
Mm-hmm. And you're an academic, aren't you, at Aberystwyth, rather than a farmer yourself? Have you already started engaging with farmers?
I have. So I work in the Knowledge Exchange Hub at Aberystwyth University, and we mainly work for Farming Connect. So I do a lot of reading and writing and all the Knowledge Exchange work for Farming Connect. So when I attend events, I've had the opportunity to interact with farmers, and what I get an idea is that calf-cow contact systems, like it's probably something already happening at a small scale, like small farmers are already practicing this, but it's really it's challenging for large-scale commercial units. So this is what I want to learn more about, and how it can be and whether it can be adopted into commercial dairy practices.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Now, Dan, upland sheep farming has come in for a fair amount of criticism from certain environmentalists, but it looks like your project's aiming to address that head on. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think it's not just upland sheep farming. I think red meat production in general has had a massive negative press over the last few years. But one thing that I want to show people, that not all meat is created equally, and that there are some farming systems that can actually benefit the environment, and we can actively, within these systems, we can actively have systems which reduce the impact that farmers are having on climate change.
One of the interesting things, I mean, this is sort of being talked about at any rate down in the south of Wales in the Banau Brychaniog sort of strategic plan about bringing sheep further down off the hills and down into the lowlands. Do you think that's part of it, or do you think that there is a future for sheep in the uplands and that they can be farmed sustainably in the uplands?
Personally, I think there's definitely a future for them. My farm here, for example, on the Great Orme, there was a massive negative impact when the sheep were taken away in the early 2000s. And so working with my landlord, the National Trust, we actually reintroduced the sheep, which is having a beneficial effect on, well, flora and fauna.
What was the negative impact?
Well, it would in a basic way, all the ranker grasses were growing because the sheep were there to graze it down, and these were choking the important plant species we have here.
So it was actually reducing the diversity up on the hills. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you. Lucy, everyone in the group here is touching on agroecology or elements of agroecology in one form or another, but you've got quite an unusual take on the subject. What's your scholarship about?
It certainly is probably slightly unusual. Well, thanks to the Royal Welsh Agricultural Society, who are sponsoring my scholarship, I'm studying tea cultivation within agroecology and the development of this sector as a high value opportunity for UK farms.
So actually, and you're looking at tea and actually growing tea in the UK?
That's right. I've been growing tea here in South Wales for just over 8 years now. So I farm organically, and I use agroforestry systems to help provide a microclimate for the tea plants to try and mitigate the climate problems that we have here for tea. But I really do believe that as a niche crop, it has potential, enormous potential as a diversification option for farms. And in many ways, it can offer a really progressive social and ecological approach to farming and soil management.
That's really interesting. Are you aware of anybody else growing tea in this country, or are you sort of in an entirely exclusive position?
No, we're certainly not exclusive. There's a sort of couple of farms in England. There's a long established farm down in Cornwall, and there's actually about 40 odd growers up in Scotland, all on very small scale. But yeah, it's certainly a developing industry in the UK and within Europe. So
fantastic. Yeah. Now, we said earlier on that travel was an important part of the scholarship. Now, Saba, as part of your scholarship, over the 18-month period, you have to spend at least 2 months outside of the UK investigating your subject. Where are you planning to visit? And what are you going to be looking for?
So actually, I think before I actually start my Nuffield travels, I'm going to spend some time on commercial dairy farms in the UK, just to have like a UK context. And I also plan to go up in Scotland, where I know the ethical dairy farms are doing calf-cow contact systems. So this will all give me an idea of, the commercial dairy side in the UK and the calf-cow contact systems that are already in practice in the country. When I submitted my project proposal, I had put down USA, Canada, Netherlands, and I think when I met my previous scholar, Anna Bowen, who had done her Nuffield Scholarship on the same subject, I identified that actually Netherlands is leading research on calf-cow contact systems. So I do intend to go to Netherlands as well. But then there are lots of other countries, I think, where after submitting my project, I realized there's opportunity to go to. I think I may go to New Zealand if the budget allows.
And anywhere else? Are you looking at anywhere in Asia, for example? So you've got North America and the Antipodes.
I think I've the good thing about with Nuffield is it's quite flexible, and you can once you are into the community, you can always take advice. So I haven't, when I was writing the project, I didn't manage to identify any farms in Asia. Obviously, probably because they're not so. It must be happening, as a daily on normal basis, but it was just not out there a lot. So maybe I might get in contact with people and look at, for example, farming practices in India, where I come from.
It's always fascinating because, as part of the Regen Dairy project that we ran earlier with FAI Farms, we found that, those people who were involved with calf with cow projects, always talked about the way in which they were concerned. An awful lot of the concern comes from other people within the dairy industry about the fact that some of the milk, quite a lot of the milk, a third of it's going to be taken off by the calf, and, how that works economically. But it does seem that the health benefits, especially if you can get the marketing right around that project, mean that you're in a really strong position, that you're saving money at the same time as losing it, and that you're able to sort of tell that story in a really positive way to customers.
Yes, that's right. That definitely, from published research, we know that there are health benefits to the calf and the cow. And it's just not, we want to look at when you are practicing calf-cow system, or obviously there's going to be some loss of sellable milk. So we want to do an economic analysis of, like, for example, you earlier on when we were talking, you gave the example of a dairy farm in Scotland, and there's going to be like a premium price for the product. But I think there's definitely moving slowly. It's not something that's going to happen immediately. It might take years to develop and adopt your practices to get into calf-cow systems. But I think with the rising awareness of farming ethically and welfare around dairy and other livestock systems, there is awareness among the people. And if there is good marketing, yes, I think there's going to be profitable returns from the system.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we talk about premium prices, but at the same time, probably what we actually mean is a more realistic price for milk, because, of course, prices have been, pressed down, and a lot of the external costs, whether those are environmental or welfare, have been externalized. So it's about re-internalizing some of those costs and finding systems for that to work. That's really interesting. Thank you. Lucy, where are you planning to go?
Well, I haven't actually managed to leave the farm very much over the last 8 years I've been growing tea. So, I've got quite a long list of places. I think there's actually sort of a lot of areas of the world that are really trying to promote the more of an ecological approach to tea production. Traditionally, it's been quite intensive in terms of input. So there's areas of South Korea that really is sort of focusing on small farms, lower inputs. Fujian province in China, and there's certain parts of Japan which I think would be really interesting to explore. But outside of that, I'm also hoping to spend quite a sizable amount of time in Europe. There's actually a sort of growing network of European tea growers, of which I'm part of the group, and I think it's important to also look outside of the tea sector to other industries and obviously agricultural areas, and just see what knowledge we can bring in.
I was really interested earlier on to hear the mention of agroforestry and the way that that's integrated within your agroecology system. I wonder if you could just give us a brief sort of sense of your farm, and the size that it is, and how you sort of rotate your various crops.
I think this is the whole point of what I'm doing with the farm, is that there isn't actually any rotation now. Tea is, once we've planted the tea will be there for 50 years, 100 years. The tea plants are there to stay. So it is a sort of permanent cropping system, and I've integrated fruit crops alongside the tea. So I've actually got everything you can think of, from apricots, peach trees we grow in polytunnels with some of the tea. Outside we've got apples, pears, all with an understory canopy as well of currants. My main reason for growing the fruit is that I've actually got we were traditionally a fruit farm. We've got about 35 acres here. And fruit is in my blood, but also with the tea, I've further diversified into making kombucha, a premium kombucha product using all the sort of broken leaf from tea production. So it really adds value to an otherwise waste product. And the fruit gives me the ability to then expand that product range and make sort of really unique products for market. So it's all about adding value, which is why I've gone down that route. And at the same time, obviously increasing biodiversity on the farm.
Fantastic. Of course, rotation was the wrong word there, but that integration of the various different crops is fascinating to hear about. Dan, Wales is often thought about as the centre of the sheep farming world. So where else would you possibly want to go?
Well, yeah, I think you're right there, but I think we're in terms of systems, we're a traditional sheep farming country, which is vastly important to our rural economy. But I think it's important, and we've got a huge opportunity to learn from countries that have had the same issues as we've had and facing those issues. And I think they're just a bit further along in addressing these problems. For example, there's a research centre in Montana in the USA, which I'd like to go to, which has helped the local farms in developing farming systems where they store and sequester more carbon than they actually produce. And they've actually added value to their produce, and they're selling that to carbon-conscious consumers. Something I really want to see is how they've practically done this, how they've implemented and how they've changed. And hopefully we can integrate that into our farm systems.
And are you looking at sort of stacking other enterprises in there as well? I'm reminded, for example, that sheep are quite often within solar farms. And as part of the Farmgate podcast, we interviewed Trent Hendricks across in the USA, who sadly died. But, you know, his business was moving sheep from solar farm to solar farm in order to graze them, to improve the biodiversity and to sort of boost that sequestration that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think sheep can be used in a vast variety of ways, and it's really important that we learn from these countries that are already doing it. As you said, in the USA, in California, they're doing that already, and it's with climate change, we get the temperatures rising. They're using sheep to control bushfires in the future by grazing areas down. So it's just not about nature conservation and climate change, it's what sheep can practically do as well.
And one of the things that people complain about with sheep, one of them is methane, and the other is that they tend to be sort of shepherded in a way where they're often sort of close cropping the ground. But you think that there are ways of using them to sequester enough carbon that they can essentially offset the methane that they're producing, presumably, and then sequester more, but also actually boost the biodiversity that's in a particular area.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, what I want to look at is increasing production whilst enhancing nature and reducing the impact of climate change. And another country I'd like to go to is Switzerland in the uplands there in the Alps. They've actually gone back to traditional shepherding techniques. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to see how this can be practically done on Welsh farms, for example. So I think there's a lot to learn. It's a massive subject, but it's vitally important for, well, from a selfish point of view, my future as a sheep farmer, but the whole of the sheep farm in the UK, I think.
Fantastic. Sophie, your dairy farm is already both organic and regenerative. Where is it that you're hoping to travel to? And what do you want to discover? And of course, what's going to happen to your cows when you're not there?
It's a really good question. Cows, when I'm not here, I've got a great team at home, and it doesn't really take both of us. We're probably stepping on toes, me and my husband now. It's a setup, and it's running well with really one of us focused on the farm. So sort of Tom's really into soil, so he'll do that when I'm at home. Where do I want to go? So big one is America. So it's somewhere where organic dairy is still thriving. The difference between conventional and organic there is so much greater. People choose organic as sort of a safe, healthy thing to buy rather than the sort of hormone-filled milk that you can buy conventionally there. Another place is Sri Lanka, where organic was seen as a solution by policy, but actually had a disastrous effect on their economy. They changed overnight to banning artificial fertilizer, and it really brought their economy down. So that's somewhere I would like to go. And another place is Taiwan, which sounds a bit strange, but 25% of their land already is already organic, and they have policy in place to encourage up to 50% to be organic. So I'm just interested in how policy affects how much land is organic, and actually then how do they build a market out of that. They want the land, there has to really be a market of people buying it. So I'm just hoping to understand from America, other reasons why organic's thriving when there's so many different milk options there. I want to learn from other parts of organic why that's doing well compared to dairy, which is struggling in the UK. But like the others, I definitely need to see some more of the UK, not just the dairy, probably other organic farmers doing a good job.
And are you expecting, having sort of done this research, to come up with a range of recommendations, for example, about how the dairy sector might address the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think so if it's got to have some action to it. So whether that's sort of how do we reinvent organic, or do we try and put our arm around regenerative and sort of try and claim that, or is it that it's always going to be a niche, and we should accept that, and the ones that really want to be organic stay organic, and the others go into another milk pool. I think it's I don't think I'll really know until I start investigating and finding out what's out there.
Now, you're very involved, aren't you, with Arla in the management of Arla Organic as well? And I wonder, is this something that you've been discussing with Arla, that they're sort of paying close attention to what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, I think organic is a really hot topic in Arla right now. The milk price is really unsustainable. You can't really make organic milk for 40p right now. So it's been a hot topic, and I'm lucky enough that I've got lots of really encouraging contacts that can help me already. And I'm really interested to see, they've got an action plan on how they're going to change this around from 40p before the pool doesn't exist. So I'm really interested to follow that in the UK. But also Arla being a European cooperative, seeing how Denmark and Sweden used to be 30% of their milk pool organic, and they've brought that down, and whether that's just cost of living and whether it will come back, or whether actually it is a total confusion by the consumer on what actually organic means.
Thanks so much. Well, thanks everyone for talking us through your plans. I think it would be really interesting just to talk a little bit more about the Nuffield Scholarship before we finish, and about the process of application. So Dan, having applied, did you have to take part in an interview, or more than one interview? What was the process? How did it work?
Well, I think the interview part is a massive part of the applying for the Nuffield Scholarship, and it has been for me. This wasn't actually the first time I applied for the Nuffield. I applied last year. I got to the final interview. I really felt like I let myself down, and I went through a really tough learning process last year. It was a really tough interview. But I don't think for me, it wasn't the interview panel or the questions they were asking. For me, I think it was the setting in which the interviews held, the final interview. It's held in central London. It's massive, shiny tower block. It'll be the closest I get to Alan Sugar's boardroom ever, I think. So it was quite an experience, I'd say. But
it's quite a far cry from Great Orme, really, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing, when you're used to the outdoors and having to answer to your sheepdogs. It's very different. But
I think maybe what they need to do is to park a Land Rover in the middle of Hyde Park, and then you all just sit in the back and have a chat.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd be a lot more at ease that way. But so this year, my local Nuffield area, which is Nuffield, Wales, of course, they organised a mock interview for me, which they absolutely grilled me this year because they'd known what I'd been through last year. And that was tougher than the actual interview, I think, but it prepared me fantastically, and they gave me invaluable feedback, which I could work on. And what I needed to do was make sure that I was able to get the right messages across during the interview, because it's not a massive interview. It's only 20 minutes, which isn't a long time, really. And it absolutely flew by. but I think, well, I did well enough anyway, so I was happy this year.
Excellent.
A lot of people have asked me what the questions were, and to be honest, I can't even remember half of them. It was just like a blur.
Yeah.
I think it's really well set out. I think it's designed to test people and take them out of their comfort zone, and it does this. And it might take them out of the comfort zone in different ways, but for me, it's definitely the setting, and that's what really tested me, really. But I must say, I really enjoyed the experience this year. It's always going to be sweeter when you get the scholarship, obviously. But yeah, it was all good.
Fantastic. Sophie, how was your interview? And of course, I know there's only 4 of you here, but is this the first time that you've actually had the opportunity to meet other scholars in the context of Nuffield, or were there kind of group sessions, group interviews along the way?
No, this is definitely the first time we've met. I mean, we've got a WhatsApp group, but apart from that, this is the first time I've met a couple of you guys. Interview wise, I mean, it's probably the most terrifying experience of my life, but I think for example, I was asked by one of them what was my favorite organic brand, and I totally forgot about Year Valley, and actually the owner of Year Valley Tim had given me my reference, so that's the kind of sort of pressure you're under. You sort of totally, I sort of said, oh, Riverford, and then I sort of went into it, and then Christina, who was doing the interview, said, oh, what about Year Valley? I said, I said, well, the thing is with Year Valley, I mean, I managed to bring it around, but the thing is with Year Valley that they actually took organic off their branding for a while, which is actually quite an interesting part, as in they wanted to be a brand in their own right, not just an organic brand. But that was total fluke that it came back from that. But I mean, that's the kind of pressure you're under. And I've got quite a few friends who've done Nuffield, and they said, look, the interview is there. You won't come out of there feeling like you've got it. You just won't. You absolutely won't. It's just part of it. But it's even if you don't get it, it's an amazing, like, the growth on doing that interview is huge. I think taking you outside your comfort zone, getting you in that room, having to dress like you had to dress. It's totally, even getting to the interview on like transport and things is a step, isn't it?
Yeah, especially post-COVID, where everything's become so confused and we're not all used to just staying on the farm. Saba, if people are watching or listening to this and thinking, that sounds like something I might like to do you have any sense of why your project was chosen? Why you and why the others here? What is it? What are the key things that the scholarship assessors are actually looking for, do you think?
I think I'm going to echo what Dad and Lucia said. I mean, to say, honestly, I don't know why I was chosen. Like, on the way, the interview never makes you feel that, you've got it. All the way, driving all the way from London to Craven Arms, I was mourning. I was telling my husband, I'm so sorry you spent time, your time and effort driving me to and from London. It's all gone down the drain. But jokes apart, I think when I started applying for Nuffield and I started talking to other scholars, I was told that Nuffield is about the individual, the scholar, and not the project. So I think they really want to see your passion for your project. They want to see your passion for agriculture. And again, like the aim of Nuffield is to develop leaders and mentors in agriculture. So I think that passion should really reflect in you at the time of the interview, which can be challenging with the nerves.
Indeed. Thanks so much. Lucy, just finally, sort of moving on from that kind of mentoring approach, I presume that communicating your research is part of the expectation of the scholarship. So how are you planning to share that knowledge that you're going to be gaining?
I think it's definitely part of the expectation, and I think it's probably the most important part. It's safe to say that anyone awarded a Nuffield Scholarship feels very honoured. And I think we've been trusted to proactively research and to disseminate what we learn to others, to really enhance the knowledge within the industry, and for future scholars coming up behind us. European tea, it's a relatively new product, and we're having to create a market and generate consumer interest and awareness. And the only way of doing that, that I believe, is to really encourage other farms and land-based businesses to consider it as a potential venture. I feel that both as an existing grower and an early market entrant, and now as a Nuffield scholar, I've got a responsibility to share any knowledge that I've already got and that I learn as widely and effectively as possible. I think Personally, I'm hoping to work with the European Tea Growers Association on a wider basis, but certainly within the UK to try and establish an organisation that provides a means for existing and potential growers to really sort of collaborate and share knowledge, and also with interested parties, be they within the wider farming, food, hospitality sectors. And I think obviously for all of us, social media, events, press, publications, they're also vital key means to sharing our learned experiences and knowledge.
That's fantastic. Look, thanks so much, all of you, for taking the time to be here with us this morning. And the best of luck with your studies and travels over the next couple of years. I'd like to thank my guests, Dan Jones, Sophie Gregory, Lucy George and Saba Amir. There's more news of the land every weekday on our website, 8point9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.